This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse, covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.
And we're live. Welcome to this week's Safer Than Your Average. On the show this week, we have Daisy. Daisy, if you just want to come in and introduce yourself.
Yeah, no problems, Blair. So my name is Daisy Silcock. I am a health and safety consultant and trainer, and I'm also into my third year now on the COSHH Members Council as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Daisy. So, I don't know if you've seen the podcast. We like to just go right back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your early life, where you grew up.
Well, I was born in Cheshire,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the baby of the family. And I think you can probably tell that the rest of them are all quite normal. And then there's me, which I get reminded about a lot. But I did everything different, Blair. I didn't follow the path that I sort of the others followed in that sense. And I think that was kind of probably part of the reason why I got into sort of the career late, because you might find this hard to believe, but when I did my A-levels, after my A-levels, I actually went to drama school. So I went to drama school in Manchester, and I wanted to be the next big thespian. But it's blowing hard work, and I kind of found myself needing to get a job, and I started working in a hotel, and really enjoyed it. This was in Cheshire, sort of Manchester, Cheshire way, and I really enjoyed it, and decided that sort of hotel life was what I wanted to do at that time. And very quickly I became a duty manager and then deputy manager and so on, and kind of progressed to various different hotels. And one of these journeys in a hotel took me up to a hotel called the Scores in St Andrews. Mm-hmm. And I was up there for a while as manager. And then something happened in my life, which I think really got me on my path. And I had a breakdown when I was at the hotel, and it was kind of absolutely, I think I was about 21 at the time, 22, so I was really young, first time away from home, big job, big place that I was in as well, St Andrews, full of people, and it's got such a sort of reputation, and I had this breakdown, and it took a while to sort of get me level. But one of the things the doctor said to me was, you need a normal job. You need a 9-to-5 job. And after taking some time off, I applied for a role at an offshore health and safety company. Mm-hmm. And I was just going in going in as an administrator, an operations administrator. Mm-hmm. But it was a small family company, and I think quite quickly they saw the management skills I'd had previously, and I think they kind of decided, I'm going to try and develop this girl. And I had a great mentor, this guy called Stuart Morrison there, who was the operations director. Mm-hmm. And he'd been in the army, he'd traveled all around the world in the oil and gas industry, and he was really somebody that I looked up to, and he taught me so much. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of a mentor really in that sense, and certainly got me on my path into health and safety that way, into a career that I started that company, and I was like, Piper Alpha, what's that, and I had to learn all this stuff. Mm-hmm. There was so many great people that worked there who had so much knowledge that it was just, I was kind of like the sponge, and I realized that this was kind of something that I wanted to stay in, and I got the opportunity to do some qualifications there as well, and then that was it really. I was kind of, I'd hit the ground running, and I'd found what it was I really wanted to do.
It gets its hook into you, doesn't it?
I know, it's weird, like, honest to God, I know, and I mean, I don't know what your personal circumstances or anything like this, but I've said to a few people that I live with my mental health, and I wouldn't be where I am without it. You know, I wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't be on the path I'm on. I don't think I'd be in health and safety if it wasn't for what happened. So there's a kind of part of me it allowed me to find out something about myself and then get me on this path. So I'm kind of glad that it happened, because it just showed me a new part of life, which I just wouldn't have seen any other way, you know. I'd lived a very sheltered life, had a very successful parents, and went to private school, went to boarding school, had it all laid out in front of me. But I think this big hiccup that happened was the thing that really kind of helped me decide, right, this is where I want to go with my career.
Sure. There's a Mark Twain quote that I love, that the two most important days in your life is the day that you're born and the day that you find out why. Yeah,
absolutely.
So if we move forward a little bit then, Daisy, you moved to work with the oil and gas company, started to kind of branch into safety from there. What was your kind of first full-time health and safety job?
I think it was when I went self-employed. I think that was the first time.
Quite an interesting route to go as well, isn't it?
I was thinking about having this conversation with you, and I was thinking about it earlier. And do you know what? I have to be honest with you, Blair, and I probably shouldn't, but I was definitely, faking it till I made it. I look back now and I think, oh my God, you knew nothing. You knew absolutely nothing. You'd done your qualifications and you had some experience behind you, like in a management role, an operational role, in an industry that was very high risk. But ultimately, it was. I definitely think I perhaps did a bit about blagging at the beginning, which I wouldn't recommend. Of course, I wouldn't. But thankfully, it's never bitten me on the behind. But it's funny now, because now I'm teaching, which is so ironic because I hated school. I hated anything to do with education. But I now look at the new NEBOSH OBE format, and so many people had said, oh, they've dumbed it down, they've done this, they've done that. No, what they've done is they've allowed people like me to give my experiences now, and what they're requesting, or what they need these delegates, these learners to do now, is to actually show me you understand what this thing is, not just pick the book up, learn it off by heart and quote it down on a piece of paper. This is very much explain this scenario, what's your view on it. And I like that. I think it's more realistic to what you have to do in this job.
I was very fortunate when I was at school. I had a teacher, and I still remember him to this day, Mr. Cairns at Clydebank High School. He was brilliant, and he taught a subject called Modern Studies, and it was all about politics and debating.
Oh yeah.
I loved it because he had a very strong opinions and could almost win you round at an argument, but was very firebrand in the way that he put things across. I used to love to go in and I would take the opposing view every time just to try and wind them up a bit and get them started, and it would pass the time for the class, because like many people, I hated school and I didn't really want to be there. I went back to academia later in life, and I think we tend to find that with safety people, don't we? It takes a certain type of person to go into safety, and it seems to gravitate towards the people that maybe didn't do very well in education the first time round.
I found that when I did my qualifications, certainly thinking about the NEBOSH demo certificate, I had a shocking time. I had an absolute shocking time. And I was the only female in a class of 17 blokes, and it was just the comments that would be, they turn my hair blue, they turn the air blue. But I remember the tutor, we were asking the tutor questions, and he'd say, Google it. it's not in the syllabus. And I think that now about the amount of times I get asked when I'm teaching, now at my work, we've got this problem. What would you do, Daisy? And I can just imagine, like, I would never say, oh, Google it, or, sorry, we haven't got time for it, because it's all a learning exercise. It's like everything you do when you're in that scenario is trying to help and teach people. And I think in a way, part of me was having gone on that training course, and I thought, and I might have probably arrogantly thought, I can do better than this. And that was kind of where I went into that, choosing this side of safety. Because I think if I look at my books now, I'd say probably only about 15% of my work is consultancy and the rest is teaching. And it's by far, it's the bit that I love the most. Yeah, I never thought I would say that. But not the current teaching I'm doing, which is like splitting between homeschooling and teaching, I'm much better at teaching about Legionella than I am sort of, letter formation,
Yeah, for sure. I had a great NEBOSH tutor when I done my NEBOSH way back in the day, a guy called Jim McCubbin, ex-para, really good guy, and had just come out the army when he tutored me, and I had zero confidence. I had always been told when I was at school, you'll amount to nothing, Boyd. That was the operandi of the day. That's what a lot of the teachers were like back in the day. So you'll amount to nothing. So I had zero confidence in learning, and he was brilliant at how he put the message across and how he really inspired people and encouraged them to develop. And it really, I can see that as a crucible of the fire igniting for me, and my passion really starting to build up in safety is going through that NEBOSH General Certificate.
And I think the sort of the IOSH Managing Safely, the NEBOSH General are the beginning for people. So if you can't grab and inspire them on those courses, you've lost some potentially amazing safety people. And I think it's really important. I had a girl recently, really, she was 18, 19 and doing NEBOSH, and I was like, hats off, so young, and she knew what she wanted to do. I think her dad was in safety and she knew exactly what she wanted to do, and she had so much passion and drive for it, and I just thought that's great. But like you say, the majority of people that I'm seeing are sort of midway through their career, or even sort of the latter part of their career, and thinking, all right, well, now I want to get into this. And I think that you have to inspire those, because adult teaching is so difficult, because everybody's got their preconceived ideas when it comes to health and safety anyway, that we're boring and that we're like the fun police and all the rest of it. And I know I'm a total safety geek. I'm the one who went on a Valentine's date and was like, that's the wrong fire extinguisher. I mean, it was a shocking date. I never wanted a second one anyway, but I weren't going to get one after that comment. But I just think it's really important that you kind of open the door and make it accessible, make it, that I know that I am not. I've seen some of the people you've had on this podcast, and by far, I definitely feel like the odd one out, because, these are some absolute geniuses, but I don't think you necessarily have to be the best of the best to teach people who may go on to be the best of the best, because I think you have to inspire them and start that seed of like, this is going to be exciting, this is a career. And also it's like with me, the fact that I can live as a single mum, as a lone parent, be self-employed, do everything I want to do in life, pick and choose when I want to work around school holidays and all the rest of it, and still do the job that I absolutely adore. And that again is kind of makes other perhaps women or lone parents think, oh, I can do this. I can have the life that I want without having to sacrifice family time or that work-life balance or anything like that. So I think it's really, I couldn't think of doing a different job. I really couldn't, There's nothing that's like itching going, oh, I always, I really want to be this. No, I've definitely found
the niche.
Niche. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent, Daisy, excellent. So if we move forward a little bit, Daisy, can you take us through your career journey? So we'd left off there, you'd went self-employed in your first safety role, which is massive for anybody to take on all of that all at the one time. So can you tell me a bit about it?
My first, to be honest, I've got to be honest, and I say the same to other people that are going into particularly teaching. You know, when I first started self-employed, I also worked in a pub on the weekend, and I cleaned people's houses on the day I wasn't teaching. But it was what I wanted to do. I gave up the job that I had at that time, which was, by this point, I'd gone from Scotland and I was down in Essex, and I was working in London, and I just decided that I wanted to be self-employed, and I wanted to work for myself. And initially, I might get one job a month, and it was so many letters and phone calls and emails to get me where I wanted to go. But I knew that it was what I wanted to do. And if I had to clean toilets and pull pints to get there, that's what I was going to do. So I got very lucky, very fortunate that there was a short-term sort of contract position. I think it was 6 months or 9 months, I can't remember now. It was working for a company that's associated with Sky, and as a working at height trainer. And so I became a regional working at height trainer. And from there, I got involved not only with, you know, Sky stuff, but also another company which installed solar panels as well. So again, it was working at height-based training, but there was an element of site inspection and kind of like the onward checking of compliance from those that you taught. And then I had a phone call one day, and it was like just a number come up, didn't know who it was, and it was another oil and gas company, and they were looking for a technical trainer on a sort of ad hoc to begin with basis. And then before I know it, I was flying out to the Middle East. And for like 4 years, I was in Qatar. Excellent. So and that was just, and it was challenging. It was, you know, like the culture was different and everything was different. But, you know, I'm always one of those people that, you know, if you've got a question, if you're not sure about something, just ask. So I would just, you know, kind of learn about local life and fitting in by asking people, and you know, it was an amazing time. It really was an amazing time, and the company was going from strength to strength. At this point, Qatar did not have the World Cup or anything like that. That was later, but it was a really fantastic time, and I really I think I learned a lot there about I used all the experience I'd had from the previous company, the health and safety offshore company. And the courses that I was doing there were all bespoke safety courses. So it was based on a training needs analysis that was done. And, you know, from that, it was then developing and training out courses. And I think it served me in such a good stead, I think, for going forward, and it really was the thing that kind of really boosted my career, absolutely. And so it was something I was really proud to get, and I was pleased to get. And then amongst that, there was other bits of work and things I was doing, and I started to get more kind of small consultancy bits and pieces that I was doing, mainly for local companies, and then word of mouth, and then word of mouth, and word of mouth. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things, and it's certainly the thing I do now. I mean, I was having this conversation this week actually with some people that work in a sales team, and I said, God, I couldn't sell. I'm useless. I wouldn't be able to sell anything, you know. And I'm very lucky that I've never really, other than perhaps right at the beginning, I've never had to really sell me, or and I feel very fortunate. Perhaps I came in at just the right point where there was less people doing what I do. And maybe I just kind of got lucky by a sheer numbers thing. Whereas now, of course, the market is so flooded by people doing the same thing. And then it's a price war, which I refuse to get into price wars, you know. So I think maybe it just hit it at the right time, that I got into this at the right time, I think. And I think, you know, I've got to say, I have to say this, Blair, because I think that there are things about me that perhaps set me apart from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I was female, I think certainly at the beginning helped. And that I was young, I think it did help, because it was different than perhaps what was out there at that time, you know. And I think now I look at sort of platforms like LinkedIn, and I love the fact that I'm now I'm getting to be one of the oldies, you know, not even 40, and yet I'm almost, you know, I kind of see all these other ones and I think, wow, it's great. And so many more women, which is fantastic. And as it should be a balance, because that really makes no difference whatsoever to your ability to do this role. So I think it's great to see that balance coming in.
I've worked for some great female safety leaders across my career as well that have been really supportive and helpful and interested in the person element of safety rather than just the corporate structure element of it. So yeah, totally get it. That's excellent. Moving forward from there then, Daisy, what's been the biggest challenge in your career? What's been the thing that's gave you some real problems or real challenges to overcome?
I think probably becoming a mum was probably like the biggest challenge for me, because it was like a logistical challenge, and it did impact on some of the things that I wanted to do, particularly with some of my work out, because when I sort of started working in the Middle East, I then went to other countries as well and did other bits and pieces of work. And certainly I think that sort of presenting myself as a single pregnant woman had its disadvantages. I think that I think from my perspective, the biggest challenges have always been to do with things like sexism, ageism, you know, like I mentioned before. I think those have been the biggest hurdles. I think if I look back at me and the hurdles that I put in front of myself, I definitely think the imposter complex was the thing that I've had the biggest thing for me was ever feeling that I actually deserved to be doing. And I always felt like somebody was just going to go, what are you doing here? Come on out. You don't know what you're on about. And I think the moment for me when I really realized that I was where I was supposed to be was when I was at the IOSH conference in 18 or 19, maybe at 19. And I was stood on stage talking and I thought, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, you know. And I think this is something that we have. I don't know, like if you've ever had that feeling, but you always kind of stood in a room and you think, everybody knows the better things and more people than I do. But all of us at some point have had that feeling. And I think it's about thinking, well, you're there because you've done something or you've earned your stripes to get where you are, you know. And all of us feel that, are we good enough feeling. And I think that sometimes that actual challenge in your own head can be the biggest challenge that you have to your career, because it's the thing that holds you back. It stops you from pushing forward and going, you know what, I can do it, I can achieve this. So I think for me, for many years, it was that I'm just going to coast along. I'm just going to coast along. And then, like I say, you know, the kind of the ups and downs were more to do with things like I say, you know, the fact that I was female, or the fact that I was young, or like I said, having a baby. But the weird thing about having a child is it's been another real defining moment, you know, totally pinnacle, because I think that was the thing that made me think, that's why I'm here. I'm the thing I was put on this earth to do. And now it's given me much more kind of oomph about, you know, going and pushing myself more and trying to achieve and do more. And I know, for example, with lockdown, I remember sort of, God, that day in March last year, and I was teaching in Manchester, and you know, came on the radio, and I just thought, oh my God,
Mhm.
Now, I'm self-employed. I have a child at home. How am I going to support myself? I for like, I don't know, an hour or so, I had a wobble and I rang my mum, and my mum was like, come on, you'll do this, girl. Come on, you'll do this. And my mum's like this kind of like fierce Italian woman. So she's like, you will do this. And I'd not long lost my father as well. So like emotionally, I was all over the place. And I thought, right, I've got to teach online. I've got to get online and I've got to start teaching. I felt that I was the first tutor to teach NEBOSH through, evening class via Zoom. And I kind of feel really chuffed to have actually just gone. It wasn't like I hadn't come up with some magical formula. It was the absolute need to put bread on the table.
Yeah.
And the fact that I couldn't teach during the day because I had a 5-year-old at home. So I had to teach of an evening. And if that meant teaching 5-6 nights a week, then that's what I did. And I think, but that then it spurred other people on. I got more inboxes, Blair, in those first weeks when I said I was going to do that, from other people saying, how did you do this? What are you doing? What platform are you using? How are you teaching this? How are you doing that?
Yep.
Than I ever got, because it was people going, okay, well, you've come up with this, it's not like an idea or anything, but just a way of doing it, of this getting around this hurdle. And it meant that we've created an opportunity now, which I don't think we'll ever lose. I don't think that training of any description that can be done in virtually, like this conversation we're having. Not that I wouldn't love to sit down and have a beer with you sometime, but there's a way that we can use this technology to our advantage,
For sure. I've presented at meetings all over the world during lockdown. I've been at the IOSH Qatar branch, for example, presenting 3 times. I would have never got that opportunity before.
Because I remember being out in Qatar and going to the branch. I think I went to the branch a couple of times because it was like, it was when I was working, or I wasn't there, or I'd just flown home or something like that. And now, like you, during lockdown, I've been to Scottish branch, I've been to Chilterns, I've been to London, all these different branches. And there's a level of like flexibility about it that you wouldn't normally. I mean, I've had it before where I've gone into like a branch or a meeting or whatever it might be, like a branch meeting, something like that. And I've got my son still coming in and out, going, Mummy, I need the toilet and all that kind of stuff. But which I'd never be able to do had it been before. He would have been at school. He would have had a nanny looking after him at night time. I would have missed those opportunities to be a hands-on mum. And I think also it teaches him something as well, that mummy has to work and he can physically see mummy working, and so I think that's, it's only a good thing.
I had the same situation. My youngest daughter was born 2 weeks before the lockdown, and I changed jobs all at the same time. So I just started a new job. I had a brand new baby in the house. I had my other daughter who's now 3. She was 2 at the time. It was just chaos, and trying to work out where you're going and how you're going to do it, and really make an influence in a new position as well is quite a challenging time.
And scary as well. Scary.
I was actually talking about this earlier today. I was thinking, I've had some real positives out of the whole lockdown and the work from home and the things that have happened as well. Like, I've been able to spend so much more time with the kids. Totally refocused how I do things. If I take a break for a couple of minutes to get up and go for a drink, I can go and roll about on the floor with them and carry on and sing songs and then go back to work feeling great, uplifted and ready to go again,
Hope your camera stays on for all of that.
Yeah, for sure. You wouldn't have got those opportunities before, though. I would have been in an office, or I would have been away traveling, or Well,
I think about sort of the working career that I had, and I remember sort of going from that 1 day a month to literally 5 days a week, and I could sell myself 3 times over. The demand was there. And I'm somebody who's in a very lucky position that I have few companies that I train on behalf of, and they book me well in advance. So like I know what I'm doing all the way up to January next year already. And occasionally you get gaps and whatever, but I was in that position where it was 5 days a week. So with being a lone parent, I had a nanny who would basically do the nighttime routine. So pick my son up from nursery or school, put him to bed, do all that stuff. And I would go to work I would leave the house on a Sunday afternoon, evening, and I'd come home on a Friday night and be away in a hotel, traveling the length and breadth or wherever I was working. And so I got the weekend, and usually on the weekend I was knackered. And so, you know, there'd be at least one nap squeezed in there, and you just like, I'd do the washing, kind of spend like, you know, 5 minutes with him, as well as trying to see family members and all the rest of it. And I can't imagine genuinely now, having done 12, like, well, just short of 12 months worth of it, I cannot imagine going back to that. I don't want to. I'd rather have less money in the bank, you know, than and more time with him, because it's just, I kind of think, why did I do that? And I did it because I thought I had to work 5 days a week, like that I had to do that. And I now think, no, you don't have to. In fact, this weekend just gone, I had somebody text me about some work. It was on Saturday afternoon. And then they sort of text me again a couple of hours later. And they text me again a couple of hours later. And I texted them back on the Sunday, and I just said, look, it's the weekend. You know, please don't be texting me on the weekend. This person's also a safety person. And I said, we as OSHH professionals should be encouraging work-life balance, not interrupting it. The weekend is the weekend, you know, and unless the world is falling down, you know, it's sacred. And I think it really saddens me. A couple of things really sadden me. I think one is if people really don't enjoy their jobs, because that really, as someone who really enjoys her job, I can't imagine ever being in that position of dreading going to work. But, you know,
it's a curse and a blessing, though. I was talking about this today as well, actually. It's quite funny that that's come up again. So it's a curse and a blessing to enjoy your job. It's a curse because you end up working far more than you should. And it's a blessing because it doesn't really feel like work.
No, I know. And there's that imposter thing coming in again, going, don't tell anyone, I get paid for this, you know. But I think that really, really frustrates me when people, and I also think the other thing that frustrates me is that when people work excessive hours, because, like, for example, when I speak to other trainers and I'll say to them, I don't know, they might be living up in Manchester, say, and they're traveling down to Southampton or wherever, and it's, you know, 5-6 hour journey. And they'll say, oh, well, I'll just get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll drive down there, teach all day and drive back. And I'm like, no, you know, we're teaching about safety and that's so unsafe, you know. Oh, I know, but, you know, hotels, and I'm like, I just wouldn't even consider it. I wouldn't. If somebody said, I'll come and teach in Southampton, I'd be like, right, hotel the night before, you know, I just wouldn't even, if that meant there was less money in my pocket, there'd be less money in my pocket, because equally I would be, a training session wouldn't be very good because I'd be knackered. But I just think those sorts of things, those are, we have to really talk the talk. So if we're saying to other organisations, you need to do a driving for work risk assessment, then why aren't we doing that for ourselves as well? That work-life balance, the stress at work stuff, why aren't we following our own rules and our own, like, you know, guidance and best practice, and doing the same for ourselves, you know?
You mentioned the stress at work element there, and I'm just going to jump on that one a little bit, Daisy. What's your opinion on it? Should occupational stress or stress-related illness be a riddle reportable incident?
I think that the way I see it, and I think this is something that I think that we're very good at safety. So I think that we've become very good as, and this is, I'm going to talk as a UK on this, because obviously that's what I've got most experience at, but I know there'll be other people outside of the UK watching this. But I think in the UK, we've got very good at sort of risk assessments, permits to work, method statements, and we know we need to do them, and we know what should be on them, and those sorts of things. The safety part of it, I think what we're not good at is the health. And I think we forget that health and safety is those two terms, you know, and I think we need to remember that health is just as important. And I mean, health in terms of exposure to substances, or like you're talking about stress at work. I think stress at work is a major problem. My sister is a GP, and she talks to me a lot about the fact that they just don't have the time to talk to people with stress. As somebody who's had, depression, anxiety, and stress in its own way as well, it's absolutely debilitating, But the problem is, when do we say as a nation, we're going to trust people when they say they're stressed? Because I think the problem you have is that so many people misbelieve, they can just say they're stressed when they're not, And we need to trust that people are giving us the right information. And I think, to be honest, if you've got, if you have any knowledge of what stress physically looks like, and also the behavioral aspects of what stress looks like, appears to be, there's no hiding that. When someone's stressed. I mean, the other week I had my post person, I don't know what the technical term is, turn up at my door, and it was pouring it down with rain, and she had a parcel for me, and I said, "Oh God, horrible day." She just burst into tears. And I was like, "Oh God, are you all right? Sorry, have I said something?" And she's like, "No, I'm just having a really bad day, and this and this and this." And she must have been there for like 20 minutes just on my doorstep. And I ended up, and I don't know whether I should or I shouldn't, but I ended up ringing the sorting office and just saying, "Look, I just want to make you aware." I didn't say who, I just thought they should know, because if anything were to happen to that poor lady, But I definitely think if we go down the lines of Riddle reporting stress, I think the parameters would have to be very, very clear.
Yeah.
I think there would be a level of sort of passing it back to GPs, medical professionals, to say this is a certified case of stress, a bit like an occupational disease. And I think it would absolutely inundate the contact centre. I think the HSE would be absolutely inundated, and I think they would end up with stress as a result of it as well.
I think so, and I think that was the point that I was talking about earlier today in a discussion off camera that I was having about the kind of Riddle reporting side of things, that it would just absolutely swamp it, because so many people are struggling at the moment.
Yeah.
So many people off of the back of this pandemic. I don't think we've even scratched the surface of the damage that's been done to people mentally.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that I've known how I felt, the ups and downs that I've had. Having conversations with my nearest and dearest about this. I was only talking to my nephew tonight. He is 19 years old. He's just started at Manchester University in September. He's barely even seen his lecturers. He's potentially had COVID. He's had Bell's palsy because of virus and stress. He's literally, you name it. And he said tonight about, I think about my well-being, and I think that he's at uni, he's in his residence at the moment, and he said, "Oh, what I do is I go to the shops. I don't do a week shop. I do like a couple of days shopping." And I was like, "All right, okay, why?" And he said, "Because otherwise I might not leave the house in 6 days." And he said, "That wouldn't be good for my mental well-being. I need to get out, and I need to see, even if it's just the cashier at Tesco's, But I think for a 19-year-old to say that, I'm thinking, wow, this is the impact it's had, because a 19-year-old, even considering their well-being, it's just, and the ripple that this is going to have is going to be for years, because people immediately, as soon as we say, right, COVID's gone, floodgates open, wall of anxiety is going to hit people. Because even if they're told it's gone, what's the next thing? What's the next COVID that's going to happen? Are we properly analysing what we've learned from this? And because it's all reactive, we're still in the eye of the storm at the moment. It would be very easy to say, "Oh, it's this person's fault, that person's fault," but I think we're still very much in it, as much as it's depressing even to say that. But I think afterwards there needs to be massive reflection on it. But the problem I have with this, Blair, and it's probably a bit, I don't know, political or whatever, is like with any incident that's happened in the UK, we look at it as much as the government wants to look at it. And of course, they're going to be looking at their own response to what's happened as well as to people. And the last thing we want is another Grenfell that goes on for years and years of discussion about an incident where, you know, have we learned anything? Has anything changed? Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have that with COVID. We can't have that with future incidents that happen in the UK in regard to any kind of health, safety, well-being issue. The response needs to be quicker. Changes need to be made instantaneously, so that, and yes, maybe they are knee-jerk reactions, but some reaction is better than no reaction. You know, it saddens me to my core to think that you know, there have not been changes to legislation following, for example, Grenfell. You know, it's just inconceivable when you think about that we continue to allow people to die without those changes taking place. And so I think that the impact that COVID has on the UK, we have to be the ones that properly go, right, what worked, what didn't work. You know, it's like the vaccination. There's a worry, there's a part of you that thinks, well, we don't know what 5 years down the line of being somebody who was vaccinated is going to be like.
Yeah.
You know, but do we just take the gamble for the here and now, you know? And I think that typically as safety professionals, that wouldn't be, we wouldn't knee jerk on it, would we? We would sit and think and analyze, and we haven't got that opportunity now. But you hope that when things get quiet, you know, when things get quieter and things seem to be settling, that those proper conversations happen. And businesses in the UK don't ever forget this, because it will happen again. There will be another pandemic at some point. And you know, I'm not like kind of the bearer of bad news here, but it will happen again, and we need to have learned all those lessons from it. So we're in a position where people don't have to fear stress, depression, you know, the increased numbers of things like you know, domestic violence at home and all these other things. I think we need to be ready for that. We need to be prepared. But it's a difficult one. And I think, for example, that the efforts that the HACCP are doing, they're doing as much as they can with a government department that has really been, the fat has been trimmed so much from that department, and it needs to be reinvested. We need to see more people in these departments. We need to see more support from the other enforcing authorities as well to assist them.
Excellent, thanks for that, Daisy. That's some really interesting insights there.
Sorry, I just get, you know, and you get me going.
Not a problem, not a problem. So if we continue on a little bit then, what's for in the future for Daisy? What's coming up next?
Do you know, it's a very difficult thing to say. I don't know the answer to that. Having just been talking about, you know, kind of planning ahead. I do think about it, and I do think that my decision on my future is very much based on being a parent. And like, as my son gets older, I think there's more chance for more career development. I think it's just difficult at the moment to try and balance everything at a point that I'm happy that I'm giving enough kind of evenly to everybody that needs a bit of me. I have thought in the past about developing and becoming more of a company rather than a kind of sole trader. But then there's a part of me that quite likes just being able to go in, do my bit and leave for the day and not have to worry about it, you know. I think I'd like to do more work in consultancy, because I do enjoy that. I do enjoy the sort of problem solving, the kind of troubleshooting element of it. I love carrying out audits. So I think that's something I'd perhaps like to develop. I don't see any major things on the horizon just yet. I think that perhaps if you'd asked me this before COVID, I would have said, you know, I want to be president of IOSH in 5 years and all the rest of it. I think COVID has made me think differently perhaps about some of my goals, you know. I think it's just made me reflect more on priorities of, I've got to keep, the roof over my head. I want to keep doing a job I enjoy. Do I want to upset the apple cart right at the moment? Probably not, you know. So I think I'll just tick along for a little bit. I'm still the right side of 40, so I've still got plenty of time to, keep going and developing. And I've done an inordinate amount of CPD over lockdown, which I'm sure everybody has.
Yeah.
And so I sort of forever learning more. And I'm adding bits and pieces to my arsenal as I've gone along. I've added some new bits and pieces over lockdown and things. But I think it's really shaken me up, Blair. It's really shaken my thoughts on what I want to do, because when I think about it, you talking before, you've got 2 kids, yeah? And, and a wife?
Yeah.
And I think that when you're doing it on your own, the fear factor is so great, because you think, if I'm not working, there is nothing.
Well, I understand that. I've been in a similar position. My wife was made redundant. She worked for an airline. She worked for Thomas Cook as cabin crew, and she'd done that pretty much since she had left school. And it was a real shame what happened to Thomas Cook. It went down obviously just before the pandemic. Then we had a new baby, and then she was off on maternity, and then the pandemic hit, and we've been trapped at home,
And you were just in a new job as well.
For sure, yeah. There's everything comes at once, doesn't it?
It really does. I think that I'd like to do more study. I would like to kind of work my way up more, but I think that right now it's hard to see that future. And I love the fact that I'm teaching people at the moment who have that, I've got a goal, but there's a part of me that's just quite happy with this life that I've got right now. And it's easy and it's familiar and it's not scary. And yes, you can say, well, that's just treading water. You're not really going anywhere. You're not moving forward. But equally, I'm not moving backwards either. And I think I'm just enjoying where I am as in a career, and also enjoying where I am as a person as well. I think because I've had like the loss of my father to deal with and all this other stuff that's been going on, I think it's just nice to feel like when my head hits the pillow of a night, that I've done a good day's work, and the next day is going to be easy. There's not going to be any drama or any ups and downs and that sort of thing. And boring, I know, but it's true.
Yeah. So this is probably the penultimate question for the podcast tonight, Daisy, but what advice or guidance would you give to someone starting out in a career in health and safety today?
I think I would probably say to somebody that they need to involve themselves in something which is of interest to them. So some aspect of this career they have to be involved in which has an interest to them in some way. So whether that's a particular industry that they want to kind of get into. I have a lot of people that go, well, I just want to get into safety, but you have to sort of, well, which part of it? It's huge. There's so many facets to this career. You've got people who are these lecturers and write the books and all the rest of it. And then you've got the people that are at the kind of the dirty end of it. And then there's all the other elements in between. So I think it's definitely finding which part of it that you want to get into. Understanding that sometimes you're going to have to take perhaps a step back or a step down from where you are and learn from someone else. So not be too kind of like, I know everything. You do need to sit back and listen to others and absorb the information and great things like the mentoring scheme through IOSH, those sorts of things. They're a great opportunity, and more people should be engaged in that, because this is a great time to learn from others. So if you're starting out and perhaps you've never written a risk assessment, or you've never written a permit to work, or whatever it might be, procedure for something, then this is a great opportunity for you to learn from others. And sometimes everyone's got to start with the basics, haven't they, Blair? We didn't just come into this and suddenly we knew everything. You learn from somewhere. I also think that there are so many resources out there, like it's just flooded with resources. And I think you should pick and choose wisely about the resources that you use. So I have been an IOSH member for however many years, I can't remember. And I've always found, I still use the IOSH magazines in my safety training. I think it's a great start for people to learn about the industry and the sorts of things that go on within the industry. But using the branches, nobody has to, anybody, literally anyone, whether you're a member or not, you can come along and sit in on a branch meeting, network with other people, ask questions and speak to people, and never think that anyone is above them. Because I remember standing, and I think I had there was the corporate head of L'Oreal, health and safety, and I had the Formula One head, and I was stood there, I was like, oh my God, I'm just like Daisy Silcock, what the hell am I doing here? But the thing is that we're all there for a reason, and we all play a part. And I think to myself, I think to myself, the work that I do is different to the work that, say, you do or anyone else does. But I know my place. My place is I'm teaching people that are going to be the future head of L'Oreal and the head of Formula One, and everybody has to start somewhere, and we're all on this journey, and we're all trying to make a difference. We're trying to make things safer. And that's what we need to remember. And I think that wherever you start, if you're new to this industry, wherever you start, network, ask questions. Don't ever think that there's a silly question, because there really isn't, because we've all had to ask those questions at some point,
Definitely. So thank you very much for that, Daisy. On behalf of the viewers and listeners of Safer Than Your Average, we really appreciate you coming on the show. How do people reach out to you if they want to be on one of your NEBOSH courses or IOSH courses?
They can just go through LinkedIn, look for Daisy Silcock, and they'll find me on there, or on Twitter, and they can get in touch. And be nice to hear from some people, even if it's just as a conversation, really, about some of the things that we've been discussing tonight. I think they're important topics, and I think that any career where, certainly for this career, which is kind of we haven't been around for sort of since day dot in it. I think it's having conversations with other women as well, and kind of inspiring them to go for it, even if sometimes they feel intimidated by this very male-dominated industry. At the end of the day, we've got a future female president on their way into IOSH. We've got Bev currently at the top of IOSH as a chief exec, who, by the way, phenomenal woman, and she's really inspired me as well, as has Louise Hoskins for that matter. But I think it's just, this is not a equality thing. It's not about sexism or whatever. It's just about seeing a true reflection of society represented in our industry, and in all its different shapes and forms and colours and all the rest of it,
IOSH has become such a big international organisation. We've got people from all four corners of the world. It's great getting them all onto the branch meetings and getting them engaged in safety and really starting to spread that message. It's excellent.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe following this, that come COVID, the Caribbean branch would like me to go over there and talk to them face to face some point.
Yeah, I think there's a long queue for that one, especially if there's business class flights going spare.
They've never been the most popular branch as they will be when we get out of COVID.
For sure. Okay, thank you very much, Daisy. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
This podcast is sponsored by Inside Out Group, the specialists in high-risk and challenging filming and time-lapse, covering health and safety videos for rail, construction, and infrastructure projects nationwide.